Okay, so we had explained that when it comes to risk register, there should be a budget cost to the activity that you're doing as a mitigation strategy. So is it going to cost you fuel? Is it going to cost you, do you have to retrain people? Is it going to cost you with printing, etc., in order for you to reduce the likelihood of that risk happening? Like on a nationwide scale, when we have issues to do with, either cholera, it means that the government is going to spend more money on its information dissemination. Also, I guess every house received, I think chlorine, to put into your drinking water, etc., which means that they were doing that to reduce the risk of cholera spreading across the whole country. So what are the costs that you expect to incur in order for you to reduce that risk? So it is important for you to budget those costs. Again, here you just put a sort of a complete figure. You don't need to itemize the item, but in terms of the budget or the finance department will then break down and itemize the costs, specific costs that went into activities or your mitigation strategy plan. Okay, so then as you are then mitigating or first responding to these risks, for instance, this is 2019, you start in 2019. How is that risk looking? After you've conducted these activities, I don't know if you've gone to retrain people, after you've retrained people because you realized that they were not able to function properly in their specific department, how is the risk looking? Is it staying the same? Is it reducing? Essentially, it would be good for it to be reducing. If it's not reducing, if it's staying the same, then what you need to do is go back to the plans or activities that you have come up to reduce the risk and probably remodify them or redefine them in order for them, to make an impact. So essentially, this is what risk management is. I'll just quickly give a summary so that we are all on the same page. Number one, it is important to describe what is that you are addressing. Okay,
describe it, and the best described risk means that you really be able to resolve it or come up with a mitigation plan, a very strong, convincing mitigation plan. So if you don't describe it well, then you won't be able to address it well. Then number two, always categorize the risk, as in which department does it fall under, because there's departments in an organization and you can just define the departments with one letter. Programs, is it finance, that kind of thing. And then if you wanted, you could actually have description of risk indicators. You could have indicators attached to that once you do M&E. However, for this, we just keep to the description, because the key drawing of a risk register is your risk description, your risk category, your risk assessment, the mitigation plan, person responsible, the budget elements, and how it's the outlook of the risk. Now, when it comes to the risk assessment, remember, it is always important for you to come up with a key for your organization. And the key looks at the y-axis is your likelihood, the x-axis is the impact. So the likelihood and the consequence. So the higher the risk is probably, or should I say no, let me see what I mean. If the risk is likely to occur, it means that it's got a high ranking, okay, on the likelihood. And if risk were to occur, the consequence or the impact, if the impact will be high, then you know those are red. You need to respond to those immediately. But say if your risk has got the likelihood to occur, okay, medium level, and the medium, and if it were to happen, the impact is not that significant, like vegetables falling off your basket. It has a medium impact. I mean, it will still be bought, you could reduce the price. But for instance, say if you're in a shop and you have very highly breakable things, if they were to fall off the shelf, that is such a high risk and it's a lot of money that would be lost. You'd need to make sure shelves are being packed properly, they're secure in the way they're kept. So whenever you're looking at a risk, you can ask yourself, let me categorize these risks or assess them in the likelihood that high, medium, low of it happening, okay?
And then the impact, again, you could probably just use the same words: high, medium, low. Ask yourself, if this risk were to happen, what is the consequence it would have? If this risk were to happen, what is the impact that it would have? And you shade then accordingly with the logic that if I have breakables in my shop and the likelihood of them breaking is high because people are helping themselves, then the consequence of those things breaking is also high on me in terms of the money that I put into, to have those breakables. So you might change around your shop structures to say, I myself will be the person getting the breakable and giving it to the person when they say which one they want, so that you reduce the risk of all your breakables being broken. So this is what we do when we're looking at assessing a risk. This is a very critical part. It's very important, because if you put a risk that is likely to occur and you don't give it the significant amount of attention it needs, you end up now having to address a problem instead of having planned to reduce the problem in the first place. Okay? The other thing we did say is that you need to then come up with a mitigation strategy, or a strategy of how to reduce the effect of that risk. Okay? Then we also said that you need to budget, put a budget amount. What is it going to cost you to implement that activity to reduce that risk? We also said, who's the risk owner? It's very important in an organization with people. We need to know that who is going to own this risk, who's going to take up the responsibility of reducing the effect of this on the ocean. Okay? I say that your risk register is linked to your objectives and your strategic plan. So once you have drawn up a strategic plan, you need to actually have a section about the risks and how you're going to reduce them. So you need to link that to this risk register of yours as you draw it. And then as you are conducting these mitigation plans or reducing activities of the effect of the risk, how is the risk looking? Okay, is it staying the same? Is it reducing? Is it even increasing? Because this would actually tell you whether the activities you're conducting to reduce the risk are making sense. So in a nutshell, that is what risk management is. It is actually future thinking, forward thinking, because you're trying to reduce the wastage of resources and time of certain things going bad in an organization. And the probable things going bad is human nature, and it's possible to happen. But that is why the risk assessment is so important. The scale of this, the magnitude of these things happening. Is it likely? And if it were likely, what impact on the organization?